Most Tropheus don't fail to breed because of aggression. They fail because the tank never feels safe enough to have a future. And that's the part most people never question. Because if aggression was the deciding factor, Tropheus would have failed millions of years ago. They didn't. They survived for millions of years. So when breeding collapses in aquariums, the fish didn't change. The environment did. And most of the time, it changed quietly, long before anyone noticed. This video is not about brutal battles. It's not about dominant males tearing through a colony. And it's definitely not about chasing breeding with tricks, shortcuts, or one simple fix. This is about the quiet rules that decide whether Tropheus breeding is even allowed to begin. Rules that don't show up on test kits. Rules that don't announce themselves with violence. Rules that usually reveal themselves months after everything looked like it was going perfectly fine. And here's the uncomfortable part. By the time you notice the failure, the cause is already old. Tropheus breeding does not start with spawning. It starts long before that. It starts with whether the system feels stable enough to support a future that hasn't happened yet. Most aquariums fail right here. Not dramatically, not visibly. They fail without ever looking broken. Humans tend to measure success in weeks. Tropheus measures safety in seasons. That difference in time is where most breeding attempts quietly die. Broken systems are easy to spot. Fish die, alarms go off, panic follows. Quietly failing systems look healthy for months. That's why they're more dangerous. In the wild, Tropheus live in dense colonies along the rocky shorelines of Lake Tanganyika. Not loose groups, not pairs. Dense, persistent populations occupying the same territory, day after day, year after year. Density in nature doesn't mean chaos. It means predictability. Rocks don't move. Grazing zones don't disappear overnight. Social hierarchies shift slowly, so slowly that no single moment feels dramatic. Pressure exists, but it spreads. And most importantly, it resolves itself through distance. In an aquarium, distance does not exist. And this is where the rules quietly change. Glass replaces escape. Corners replace retreat. Every individual is forced into constant visual and social contact. On the surface, nothing looks wrong. No torn fins, no explosive chases, no obvious bullying. This is usually the moment humans relax. But Tropheus don't experience stress as isolated events. They experience cumulative pressure. One displaced rock means nothing. One interrupted feeding means nothing. One added fish means nothing. Tropheus don't evaluate moments. They evaluate patterns. And patterns either feel safe or they don't. Breeding is the first biological process that cumulative pressure shuts down. Long before illness, long before death. At this point, most keepers do what feels responsible. They change something. Humans often confuse action with control. But in Tropheus systems, unnecessary action becomes the instability itself, which is exactly what the fish didn't ask for. Here's the first myth that needs to die. More Tropheus does not automatically mean better breeding. Density only works when stability exists underneath it. Without stability, numbers don't soften pressure, they amplify it. This is why so many keepers say the same sentence, almost word for word. They look great, they eat, they grow, but they never breed. That sentence usually means one thing. The system never stops shifting long enough for the fish to trust it. And trust is not optional here. Let's talk about dominance because this is where Tropheus behavior is most often misread. The most active male is rarely the most successful breeder. Chasing is not dominance. Noise is not control. In Tropheus, true dominance is quiet. It's posture. It's positioning. It's the ability to occupy open space without constantly reminding everyone else that you exist. A dominant male doesn't terrorize the colony. He stabilizes it, and females are not impressed by aggression. They're assessing predictability, often long before spawning ever becomes visible. In crowded African cichlid tanks, visual lines never settle. Movement never slows. Territories are suggested but never confirmed. A male may appear dominant one day and uncertain the next. From the outside, this looks like normal social activity. From the inside, it feels like a future that keeps changing. And no Tropheus female commits to mouth brooding under those conditions. Remember, Tropheus are maternal mouth brooders. Once a female takes eggs into her mouth, she stops eating for weeks. She becomes slower, more exposed, biologically vulnerable. This is not a casual decision. It's a calculated risk. For the female, breeding isn't about today. It's about whether the next several weeks look survivable. If tomorrow feels uncertain, today doesn't matter. And that risk only makes sense when the environment feels safe beyond the present moment. If the system feels unstable, the correct decision is not to breed. It's to abort. That's not failure. That's logic. This is why so many spawns fail silently. Eggs are taken, then lost, swallowed, or released too early. The keeper often never sees the moment things went wrong, because nothing exploded. The water was right, the food was right, the tank looked full and alive, but the future felt uncertain. And Tropheus do not invest in uncertainty. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Crowded tanks create constant, low-level interference. Not dramatic aggression, just enough pressure to prevent resolution. Subordinate males don't disappear, they hover, they test boundaries, they interrupt. Quick, opportunistic spawning attempts happen on the edges of the system. Sometimes they even succeed briefly, but the system never stabilizes afterward. And when stability doesn't follow, the female carries that stress forward. Stress does not support successful mouth brooding. It delays it, then cancels it. Now let's talk about spawning sites, because this is another place where people think they're seeing war when they're actually seeing instability. In Tropheus, spawning sites aren't won through combat. They're accepted through consistency. A site becomes viable when it remains usable over time without challenge. In crowded aquariums, that almost never happens. Rocks are rearranged, fish are added or removed, flow patterns change, lighting schedules shift. Even routine maintenance resets spatial memory. To us, these are small improvements. To Tropheus, they erase the map. And this is why breeding often stops weeks after what seemed like a harmless change. The tank didn't collapse, it just stopped becoming a place worth investing in. Here's the moment most people miss. Around 2 to 3 months into a stable-looking setup, breeding either begins or quietly shuts down. This is where many viewers mentally check out. Everything looks fine, so attention fades. But this is where the real test happens. Has the system remained predictable long enough for the fish to believe it will stay that way? Or has it been quietly rewritten every few weeks by well-meaning hands? Let's break one more dangerous assumption. Perfect parameters do not create breeding conditions. Stable parameters do. Tropheus tolerate minor imperfections. They do not tolerate fluctuation. Rising nitrates, uneven oxygen distribution, blocked flow behind rockwork, inconsistent lighting schedules. None of these trigger immediate alarms, but they stack. And breeding is the first biological process to shut down when that stack becomes heavy. This is why experienced Tropheus breeders often have tanks that look boring. No constant rearranging, no experimentation, no visual drama, just repetition, consistency, patience. From the outside, nothing is happening, which usually makes humans uncomfortable. To humans, stillness feels like failure. To Tropheus, stillness feels like safety. Inside the tank, everything is finally locking into place. And when breeding happens, it is quiet. No spectacle, no chaos, a patch of sand cleared calmly, a female observing over time, eggs taken, and then disappearance. That silence is not emptiness, it's trust. So how do you know if you're getting close? Not by color, not by size, not by aggression. You watch behavior. Do patterns repeat day after day? Do individuals hold space without constant testing? Do females move freely without hugging corners? Do fish feed without hesitation? These signals matter more than any test strip ever will. Most Tropheus breeding failures are not dramatic. They're delayed. The mistake is forgotten by the time the consequence appears. And because there is no explosion, no visible crash, the keeper keeps adjusting. And every adjustment pushes breeding further away. This is why Tropheus are not difficult fish. They are uncompromising fish. They do not adapt to instability. They tolerate it. And tolerance always has a limit. If you want Tropheus breeding, you don't chase spawning. You remove uncertainty. You stop resetting the system. You let time do its work. You allow the colony to believe that tomorrow will look like today, and that brings us back to the beginning. Tropheus breeding is not won by force. It is allowed by stability. If this changed the way you see your Tropheus or African cichlid tank, don't leave quietly. Think about what changed in the last few months. Not dramatically, subtly. And if you're new here, subscribe to Dark Cichlids, because this channel isn't about chasing outcomes, it's about building systems that earn them. We don't rush breeding, we don't force results, we wait until the environment allows truth to surface. Knowledge swims deeper here, and most of the rules that shape your tank never announce themselves loudly. They work quietly, over time, and they're already shaping your system right now. And if you want to understand Tropheus on a deeper level, not just breeding but behavior, pressure, and why this species reacts the way it does, I highly recommend the detailed Tropheus documentary we released earlier. It's one of our most watched videos, and it lays the foundation for everything you just heard. You'll see it on the top right of your screen now. Watch that next, and we'll meet there.